How does a player go from being one of the most feared athletes in the NBA to sitting at home waiting for a phone call that may never come? We're talking about Russell Westbrook, a man who built his name on explosive dunks, relentless energy, and a competitive fire that made him unforgettable. Worth nearly $500 million with an MVP trophy and a first-ballot Hall of Fame resume, Russ should be untouchable. And yet, the league has quietly turned its back on him. It's one of the strangest stories in modern basketball. Because if Russ was just washed, we'd get it, but he's not. He can still play. He's still in the gym every single day, attacking workouts with the same fire he had as a rookie. The problem isn't effort, the problem is perception. So why doesn't anyone want him? Here's the paradox. Russell Westbrook still has the skills, the intensity, and the willpower of an NBA star. But no team is willing to give him a long-term role. He's gone from making $40 million a year to waiting for a minimum contract offer that might not even come. And remember, this isn't some role player scraping to stay in the league. This is a 9-time All-Star, a league MVP, and the man who averaged a triple-double across multiple seasons. Something no one thought was even possible in the modern era. But that's exactly the problem. Russ is too good, too competitive, and too forceful to quietly fade into the background. Teams don't know what to do with him. He's in the same situation we saw with Carmelo Anthony and Allen Iverson. Legends who weren't quite finished but no longer fit. And if you think that's unfair, wait until you hear the rumors about the only team that even considered signing him this offseason. The Sacramento Kings were the one team rumored to have some interest. But here's the catch. They didn't even have a roster spot for him. For Russ to join, they'd have to move Malik Monk or Davion Mitchell just to make space. Think about that. A Hall of Famer begging for scraps, while the Kings of all teams debate whether to make room. And honestly, it makes sense. The Kings are the NBA's definition of stuck. Too good to tank, too weak to contend. Built around players already past their prime, yet pretending they're ready to compete. Signing a 37-year-old Westbrook would be peak Kings logic, chasing a big name instead of building a future. But Russ has been around long enough to know that patience might be his best option. And that brings us to the real mystery. Why the Denver Nuggets, the team where he actually played well, decided to move on without him. On paper, Westbrook wasn't bad in Denver. He gave them energy off the bench, had stretches where he looked unstoppable, and even hit big shots in the playoffs. He averaged 13 points and 6 assists, good enough to get 6th Man of the Year votes. He even saved Game 1 against the Clippers, first forcing overtime with a clutch shot, and then dishing the game-winning assist to Aaron Gordon. So why didn't Denver keep him? The truth is brutal. For every highlight play Russ delivered, he gave up 2 or 3 disasters. Missed shots, bad turnovers, defensive lapses. The Nuggets loved his fire, but they couldn't ignore the numbers. Against the Thunder, Russ had a staggering minus 92 plus-minus. He shot 35% from the field, 22% from 3, and committed more turnovers than assists. Denver looked at their options and decided depth was better than drama. Instead of Russ, they brought in solid veterans like Cam Johnson, Bruce Brown, and Tim Hardaway Jr. Players who may not be explosive but don't rock the boat. And speaking of drama, what happened in that locker room may have sealed Russ's fate. After the Clippers series, reports surfaced of a heated exchange between Russ and Aaron Gordon. According to ESPN, Gordon confronted Russ about his attitude, and at least one teammate privately called him immature. Gordon later defended Russ to the media, praising his talent, but carefully avoided denying the report itself. That's telling, because if there's one thing Russ brings besides speed, intensity, and energy, it's a dominant presence. He's not the type to sit quietly in the corner as the 7th man on the bench, and when teammates feel that clash of energy, it creates tension. This isn't new. In fact, it's the exact same problem that sank 2 other legends before him. Allen Iverson was still electrifying in his 30s. He could score 25 any night. But when his explosiveness started to fade, he couldn't accept a smaller role. That refusal turned his final years into a messy, painful exit. Carmelo Anthony faced the same curse. A 10-time All-Star, but when his defense collapsed and he stopped moving the ball, no one wanted him as a role player. He was out of the league for a year, not because he couldn't score, but because he couldn't fit. Russ is in that same paradox. Unlike Iverson, he is willing to accept a bench role. Unlike Melo, he's not resistant to change, but his style makes him impossible to use as just another guy. He's too involved, too forceful, too central to every possession. When Russ is on the floor, he doesn't blend in, he takes over. And for most of his career, that was a gift. Now, it's the very thing pushing him out of the league. But here's the part that really hurts. This didn't happen overnight. The narrative around Russ started changing years ago. Back when Kevin Durant left Oklahoma City for Golden State, Russ's reputation flipped. Until then, he was a beloved star, Rookie of the Year, 5-time All-Star, Finals appearance on his resume. But once KD left, Russ was exposed as the guy you couldn't win with. Media voices like Colin Cowherd planted the seed, calling him a convertible sports car. Flashy, exciting, but unreliable when it mattered most. At the time, the people said Cowherd was crazy, but a few years later, everyone was saying the same thing. Russ went from being celebrated for his triple-doubles to mocked for stat padding. From the heart of OKC to a player traded 5 times in 5 years. And no matter how hard he plays, that narrative hasn't gone away. Let's look at the reality. Since KD left, Russ has been on 5 different teams and is about to make it 6. He's never lasted more than 2 seasons in one place. He's had 7 first-round exits, and despite his highlights, the deeper numbers tell the story. High turnovers, poor shooting, and no playoff success. It's the Hall of Famer paradox in full effect. Too great to be forgotten, but too flawed to be trusted. And for the first time in his career, the NBA might finally be ready to move on without him. So what happens next? Does Russell Westbrook find one last team to believe in him, or does his story end the same way as Iverson and Melo? Too proud, too strong, and too unique to fit into a league that's moved on. And while Russ fights to stay alive in the NBA, there's another story. Maybe even more shocking. A player who walked away in his prime, handed back millions of dollars, and quit the league without warning. His decision stunned teammates, fans, and executives. And when the truth finally came out, it flipped everything upside down. Because if you thought Russell Westbrook's fall was dramatic, wait until you hear why Larry Sanders decided to walk away from the game entirely.